Is that a Comdex machine?
No, this is just a normal mixer. We didn't go with the Comdex. We're using the computer to connect up to the station, and then this for mixing.
I've never seen a Comdex. I've just heard radio guys talk about it, how they...
I haven't seen one of the new ones, but basically, from what I've heard, they're basically just a little portable console that just connects up. Okay, we're about to start. All right, I guess you're going to be starting us off, Brandon. Good morning, folks. Welcome to another show.
Good morning.
Hey, welcome.
Good morning,
Brandon.
Houston. And thank you, Hal. I appreciate that. All of our listeners on the internet, good morning to you as well. We are the Massive Passive Dealmaker Show hosted by the Alamo RIA. I am Brandon. I'm actually filling in for Ray Sasser and James Haney, who are the usual hosts this morning. And joining me is the amazing Hal Gailey that you heard just a moment ago with Bayou City Techs. And he handles all of our tech support here. And the man of the hour that we're going to be interviewing today is Tom. He's a longtime friend of the Alamo RIA. He's been investing for about 3 decades through multiple up and down markets, very successful and knowledgeable in owner finance, property management, and many other aspects of real estate. Today, he's not only an investor that does deals. Good morning, Tom. He's not only an investor that does deals, but he's also a lender.
Right.
So I apologize. I had to get that out there, Tom.
Yeah,
so
well, I
I
just want to talk about a few vendors real quick to kick this off, and I'm going to let you guys go, okay?
All right. Well, again, our show is sponsored by our vendors. And Pat, if you could go ahead and mention our vendors.
Yep, I'm sorry I was late getting in here, but, I'm out there talking to new people in our meeting. We have our monthly general meeting here this morning. I guess you already told everybody about that, right?
Not yet. You
Well,
kind of jumped in before I got the chance.
I'm
to.
sorry. I just wanted to get this out of the way because I need to get into the room and socialize. I'm Pat Reisinger. This is the Massive Passive show, our real estate show. Our website is massivepassiveshow.com. So be sure and write that down. Put it down deep in your wallet, right? Massivepassiveshow.com because you're going to need it. We have vendors here that support the show. Most of these vendors, we have 23 vendors now, and 18 of them have worked with me now for like 16 years, which is good because, the cool thing about this business, and Tom will tell you later about it too, is that once you get a good vendor and you train him and he trains you, you don't want to switch, right?
Absolutely.
Because you don't have to worry about his work. He knows what you want, and he knows what you expect, and he does it. And 9 times out of 10, I will go look at the job to make sure his guys have done it if he hadn't checked it. But 99% of the time, I never have to correct anything or get him to do anything because he hires good people that know what I want to because they know me. Real quick, we've got several vendors. One is Hal Gailey. He's already been mentioned. He's with Bayou City Techs. He's our engineer, and he handles all of our podcasts and our Zooms and everything. And Hal's been with me now for 16 or 17 years. He is great. I mean, you do any desk, right, Hal?
Yeah.
And therefore, he can sit at his office, and if you have a problem, he'll get you to download any desk, and there'll be a code number on there, let's say 66974, and you give him that number, 66974, and then he can get on your computer from his desk at his office and correct your problem. And it's amazing because you see the mouse moving all over, on your computer and going to all this different codes and stuff that he's hitting on your hard drive. And then 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes later, your problem is fixed. And his pricing is great. So you definitely need Hal Gailey. And you can get Hal Gailey on our website at massivepassiveshow.com. Also, we have myself, which I'm residential rehab consulting. I'm a project manager and a consultant, and I've been doing this for almost 50 years. So I help you run your jobs and make sure you don't lose money on the rehab because Tom will tell you that's where the rubber really meets the road, right, Tom?
Absolutely.
When you start doing a rehab, and especially if you're new, you have a tendency of falling in love with the deal. So you spend more money than what it really takes to get it on the market and get it sold.
Yeah, I've got 2 rehabs going right now,
Yeah.
and you can you can really lose a lot of money if you make some bad decisions.
That's right. And that's why it takes planning. What I do is I meet with my clients and I go through and I build a scope of work. I take a lot of pictures. I build a scope of work because when you're getting contractors, for instance, I do my jobs where my contractor does labor only. And I provide the materials through Home Depot and Mono and my suppliers. And that way, because most of these contractors can't figure materials, so they always bid it too high or too low. And then if they're too high, then they're ripping you off. If they're too low, they're getting in trouble and probably want to leave the job before it's completed. So I buy the materials with the doors and the sheetrock and the paint and all that kind of stuff. And by building a scope of work, if you have 2 or 3 guys looking at it, they're all looking at the same thing. Whereas if you don't have a scope of work written out, every time you walk through the job, it's something a little different. So then if you wonder why your bids are different, that's why, because you didn't do a scope of work. Okay, real quick, we have Clint Yates, which is his business is direct mortgage loans. And Clint's been with me for a long time. And if you need cash outs or you want to refi your rehab or whatever, if you're a homeowner and you're looking to finance, you want to call Clint Yates, and you get him on massivepassiveshow.com. Real quick, our hard money lending company here is Cal Barron with Longhorn Lending. They've been around a long time. I've known Cal for over 10 years. They got great stuff, and they can close with you within about 48 hours or so. I mean, they close pretty fast. And on most loans. Now, if you have some snags, naturally it'll take a few extra days maybe. But those are great vendors, and the rest of our vendors, we have tree vendors, electricians, you name it, and all these people have been with us a long time. So I'm going to turn this show over to you guys and let y'all have some fun. See you, Brandon.
Thanks, Pat. I appreciate you. As Pat mentioned earlier, we are actually live at the the monthly networking meeting today. And I say we, I'm in San Antonio, but the rest of the RIA is currently in Houston. They're located at 1001 West Loop South, and that's Suite 550 in Houston, Texas. They're going to be there until about noon, so if you're in the area and you want to stop by and check it out, please feel free to do so. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we've got Tom on the phone and we've got Hal with us right now. We're going to be doing a small interview talking a little bit about Tom's experience as an investor, how he started and things like that. So to get us started off, Tom, how did you get started as an investor?
Well, I've been either fired or laid off from every job I've ever had. I'm not proud to say that, but that's the truth. It appears as though I make a better chief than an Indian, although I've spent the first half of my career being both. As a result of being fired from the oil and gas industry in the early 80s, my father and stepmother were members of formerly known as the Rich Club, and they said, you don't have anything going on, perhaps you could attend a meeting, and if it's of interest to you, just, maybe you'll pull something out of it. So we went to the meeting, and there was a speaker there. I think at the time, and again, this was in the mid-'80s, I think it was Barney Zick, and Barney Zick had some deal he presented, and at the end of the transaction, we pulled out $22,000. I thought, $22,000, that's more than I make a year. There must be something here for the rest of us. So it really enticed me. That was the carrot in front of my proverbial horse face, that if Barney can do it, he didn't look, guy was super sharp, but it just appeared to me that I had nothing else going on, and if Barney could do it, perhaps I could do it. And I think that's the biggest hurdle to most people. They think that, well, this guy is so skilled, professional, he's been doing it a long time, there's no way I could match that. Well, I disagree. Over time, as you enhance your skills, your knowledge, your abilities, your education, key education, you can do what these guys do. It just takes a while. You've ever heard of the term, Brandon, it was a 20-year overnight success. Well, that's me. It took a generation to develop the skills that are required in this business, but that doesn't mean you don't earn money along the way. And as your skills increase, so does your income, and that's what I was after.
Oh, that's amazing. So what was the first skill that you started to work on in investing?
Well, again, I'm not proud to say this either. I started listening to, back in the day, they had cassette tapes. And then we went from there to CDs. I listened to other investors that were already doing what I wanted to do or what I thought I wanted to do. And these guys were super successful national speakers. Jimmy Napier, who's unfortunately now deceased. Jack Miller's deceased. John Schaub, who's still teaching, I think, once or twice a year. Pete Fortunato, I just went to his class in Florida last month. Hey, and I've been doing this a long time. I still go to these classes because there's always one other idea that you don't have that they have or another student has to enhance your education.
And things are always changing too.
Of course, the market is a roller coaster, and you got to keep track. One of the things I've not been successful at is technological advancements in marketing and buying. These guys that have developed phone apps they're buying houses with their phone. I don't know how to do that, but I'm at the point I don't need to do that.
Right.
Because we've had such a success and a modicum of success over the years that we do maybe a house every other month. That's enough. That's good enough to keep me going.
So when you talk about listening to the cassette tapes and stuff like that, what were you initially drawn to as far as like a strategy in investing?
I didn't know enough at that point to develop a strategy. I knew that I was out of money. I didn't have income, and I was doing anything I could at that time to develop sources of income. So I was very lucky to get into a local kind of a roundtable group of successful investors, mentors. They turned out to be mentors to me. One was a former NASA. What was his? He was a math guy. Worked for NASA. He's retired. Another guy was a former road builder, and all these guys had held up or set aside those professions to become real estate guys, single family homes. And they were kind enough to let me sit in on their Monday breakfast at Kip's, big boy, and we would talk about this stuff. And they just basically held my hand. What you need to do next is this. And they told me what to do, and I would report back the next week. I think it's critical to get a mentor that is already doing what you want to do to show you the ropes. If you don't have that, the uphill battle you're facing is tremendous. And when these guys tell you to do something, they're not telling you to give you a challenge. They're telling you because they know what it takes because they've already done it multiple times, and it works.
Right. And what I found in the start, because I'm a beginner investor myself, and what I found in the start is that you don't know what you don't know. You have no idea what the terminology is. You have no idea what the language is. These people are talking in French for all I know, right? And so you have to sit down and you have to listen and you have to learn like you did with the cassette tapes. And then you have to ask questions. You have to be curious and you have to really want to know what kind of things are out there.
And you have to be willing to do things that your peers aren't willing to do. For example, get up on a Saturday morning instead of going to the beach or laying in bed. You need to get up and go out and go to a meeting and listen to people that have knowledge that you need. That right there will set you apart over 90% of everybody else. Just doing that.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yes, for sure. And so when I was talking to Ray before this interview, because I'd never met you or got to talk to you before today, Ray was telling me that you were one of his dear friends that he made at the old Ridge Club, which we've now kind of has gone away, but we've started up a new RIA there, which is the Alamo RIA in Houston. And you're part of that as well. But he mentioned that you two actually went out of town for his very first time going out of town to a seminar to listen to other people speak about investing. Do you remember that?
Well, I remember doing it multiple times. I can't remember the first time, but I mentioned earlier one of our teachers, Jimmy Napier, who was out of Florida, Northwest Florida, and he would have twice a year, he would have a basic, he called it a basic paper class, and it was 3 to 5 days. And then 6 months later, he had an advanced paper class, which was amazing because 6 months before 6 weeks before each of these events, he would put an ad in the newspaper, local investors seeking opportunity in this area, something very innocuous, just a catch-all ad. And if you have something that you want to sell or trying to put a deal together, come to our meeting and we'll talk about it. So we would have a room with 200 to 300 people, investors across the country, sitting in rows of tables, and Jimmy would speak at the front of the room and talk about deal making, and every hour, every other hour, one of these people would walk in and say, well, I'm trying to open, at that time, one guy would say, I'm trying to open a video store, VHS video store rental, and I need $23,000 to get this done. And Jimmy would actually interview the person that needed the money, and he would show you how to live negotiation, the questions to ask, to try to find out what their true needs were. Well, it turned out they didn't need $23,000. They might have needed $12,000 right now to secure the office space and the building. And then months later, they would have needed more money to buy the inventory and get the permitting done. And so he would show you how to deal structure and how to find out what the people really need. If you can't find out what people really need, you can't really help them. And that, to me, is
Right.
critical. You can't solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is. Is that fair?
And asking questions is one of the best ways to get there, but asking the right questions.
Absolutely. And you can't learn anything by speaking. You have to ask questions and listen intently to what their needs are. Once you get that nailed down, you can develop a solution of some sort, and you may not always have a solution, but at least you've helped. I had a lady call me this week that needed to borrow money, and she needed to borrow more money than I had available. So I gave her an alternative. Now, I'm not going to make any money on that conversation, but she got some help, and if she can implement what I advised her to do, she's going to get into a home anyway, and a year from now, she may send somebody else that I can help. And that's what all this is about. It's just helping people. If you help people get what they need, you'll get everything you want. That's just
I
the
do
way.
believe I've heard that before, yeah. And that's a really good saying.
Yeah.
Something that I've taken to heart for sure.
Absolutely
Um,
true.
When you're looking at your investing business, when you first started compared to today, how has it changed? Where has your focus gone from when you first started to today?
I think the biggest change is I have resources now. Back then, I had to borrow money for everything I was doing. We went to Florida. I went to Florida. I had to borrow money to get entry into the class. I forget what it was, $299, $399 for the class. And in lieu of paying the admission fee, I made a deal with the speaker. I was in the real estate sign business, and I would say, look, I'll trade you all these signs in lieu of the equivalent amount of signs for the amount of entry into your class. And he said, well, if you don't have money, I'll take the signs. So what was your question again? I kind of deviated from what I've...
No, that's all right. I thought that was really interesting because you're talking about building a community just a minute ago in the question that I asked you, and then you're talking about how do you actually build a community? You offer something that somebody else needs, in order to get the thing that you want.
Absolutely.
And that was a perfect example of that with the signs for the entry into class. My question though was when you first started, you focused on just generating income as much as you could because you didn't have a source of
Right.
income.
Well,
how has your focus shifted to now?
Well, because I had to borrow money to do business back then, and now I loan money to other people so they can do business. And that only came from years and years of, for lack of a better term, snowballing assets, snowballing the income, not spending everything you make. I think a huge mistake a lot of people make is if they earn a certain amount of money on a deal, they earn $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, or maybe even more. They think, well, this is easy. I'll spend this and then I'll just do it again. Well, the again may not come for another year and a half because they haven't honed their skills yet. If you could do that every week, you can spend some money. But what I did was every time I made a little bit of money, I rolled it back into the business. I rolled it back into my education. I bought more tools. I reinvested in me. With now I had money to go to class. Now I had money to do my own work, and I did a lot of my own work back then. So that was critical. And now, because I don't have the financial restraints that I did before, I can hire this help out. And Pat was talking about earlier about getting good contractors, et cetera. Well, when you can pay a guy to paint your house, that gives you time to go look for another house while he's painting it. And
Right.
that took me a long time to learn that, because I didn't have money to pay a painter. I was the painter.
Yeah,
But then
I totally understand that.
every minute I was painting, I was working at painter's rates. I wasn't working at investor rates.
And so that goes to like the return on the investment that you're putting into the property. Whereas
Absolutely.
a higher money generating thing for you would be to find the next property versus painting the house.
Right. Always
So-
work at your highest unit of value per hour. If you know how to make deals, you should be making deals. If you know how to paint, and that's what you're good at, and somebody else can find deals, go ahead and do the painting and let somebody else find the deals if you're not good at that. Whatever you're good at doing, and hopefully it's real estate investing, do that as much as you can, and the rest of the day do other things that pay you less. But concentrate on your highest value per hour of what you do. For example, just before the meeting, I was talking to Ray that the most money you can make, not per hour, but per minute, is negotiating.
Oh, that's true. Absolutely.
If you're doing a quantity purchase on any kind of a widget, on any kind of a product, and they're telling you it's $100 per unit, and you can get that down in a 3-minute discussion to $87 per unit. Well, that doesn't require a lot of physical work, but it saves you a lot of money. And I think that above most things that we're going to learn, negotiation skills are certainly at the top of that list. Certainly in the top 2 or 3, because that's your
I
highest
totally
rate of
agree.
return.
And one of the things that I've found interesting since I've taken over the position of executive director here is communication and negotiation is something that you always have to hone and you always have to work on. You can never be good enough at it to say, I'm done. I don't have to worry about anything.
And one interesting thing is today's event is something of a primer on finding deals and getting the money for those deals, both of which rely super heavily on your negotiation skills. You're going to have a much better deal, making more off of it and getting more done, and you're going to be able to get money more easily if you have those negotiation skills.
That's right. And on the 22nd and the 23rd out there in Houston, we're actually going to have a class specifically for this is how you find deals. This is how you find the money for those deals. And this is how you put it all together to do it. So, Tom was mentioning getting a group of people together to kind of hold your hand and tell you these are the steps to go through. We're going to have a class on that in Houston. And if you'd like to know more, you can absolutely visit our website, massivepassiveshow.com. And it'll have a little link there for information about the class. Now, Tom, we've talked a little bit about deals, and one of the questions that I had when you talked about the paper, what did he mean when he talked about like the beginner paper and the advanced paper class? Like what is paper?
Okay, paper is just street terminology or investor lingo. It seems like every profession develops their own nomenclature to keep everybody else out of the game. For example, the stock market, the shorts, putting, selling long calls, none of which I know anything about. That's just not my field. I don't know anything about the stock market, and I'm happy to say I've never lost money in the stock market because I've never invested in the stock market. I don't know anything about it, but they have their own language. Real estate also, insurance, all these professions, doctors, attorneys, everybody develops their own language to keep out the quote-unquote layman. Well, when we have these discussions and we have the term paper, as you called it, paper is just the name for owner financing, or because all these documents are on paper by definition. So when somebody says I have paper for sale, they've taken back financing on their home and they want to sell that document. It is a marketable item. It has value and people will buy it. And the two different classes, the beginner class was how to make those calculations, how to run a calculator, right down to how to turn the thing on, which one to buy. It was a basic paper class. So we did that class, and it was 4 or 5 days, and he showed example how to solve problems mathematically of what paper value would be, etc. The advanced class was what I alluded to earlier, was he would bring in people that had business opportunities, and when that client would leave the room, we would start running numbers and see, well, what would that actually be worth? And how to analyze deals. It was kind of like Shark Tank long before Shark Tank ever existed, except there were 300 people sitting on stage with checkbooks.
Yeah,
and somebody
you're crowdsourcing the
Yes.
investment opportunity.
And it was interesting because after they would give a presentation, and if it sounded interesting, people that had resources, back then I did not, I couldn't do any of this. I was the one needing money. Jimmy would say, is there anybody interested in that transaction, whatever it was? Go out into the hallway and meet with this guy and see what y'all can do. And some people would go into the hallway and make deals. I was the recipient of one of those things because I stood up at one point in the class. My presentation was, I need to borrow money. I'm trying to buy houses in the Houston area in the early 80s. I didn't have any money. I had a lot of time, a lot of experience. I was working on them myself, but I couldn't make the $2,000 take over the payment to cure the note. Remember back then, house payments were $300 a month. Now escrow is $300 a month or more.
Right.
So I would need $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 to buy a house, make up the back payments, do the repairs, etc. With materials. I didn't even have that. So I told people, I don't remember what the house count was back then. I probably had 8 or 10 houses, and I stood up and said, I need money. I have resource to get deals done. I'm finding deals. Deals were everywhere in the mid-'80s, but no resources. And Jimmy said, anybody interested in what Tom has going on, meet him in the hallway. So we did, and a retired postal worker with 50 free and clear houses in Florida met me in the hallway, and we talked a bit, and he wrote me a check for $6,000. That was more money than I made in half a year. And I left that meeting with this check and brought it back to Houston, bought houses with it, did everything I said I was going to do. And some months later, he showed up at my door. How'd you spend my money? And I showed him the deals we had done. And I think within the next year, he had loaned me over $50,000. And we're talking about in the mid-'80s. That was a big chunk. And remember, it took me, at that time, I was making $21,000 a year. And he wrote me checks to do deals, charged me outrageous interest, but I was buying them cheap enough I could pay the interest and still make money. Then rents would pay the money back. And ultimately, I ended up paying off Charles by refinancing those houses. So it was a bridge loan to get me to where I wanted to go. And
a bridge loan is just a small term loan to go from from initially buying it to getting a long-term loan, like a 30-year mortgage.
Exactly.
Correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And so do you think that this influenced you from, doing just straight deals to becoming a private lender as well?
Well, ultimately it did, because once the cash flow started to build up, at one point I had a pretty strong rental fleet, real strong cash flow. And my wife ultimately went with me to one of these meetings, and she had money from her 401k or whatever it was. I forget exactly the entity she had it stored. And we started, they had cow paper for sale. They had mobile homes that you could finance, car paper, automobile loans, and they had very high rates of interest, 25, 30% annualized rates of return. And we thought, well, we can put 5,000 out and just roll the dice. It's very risky. And if it doesn't pay back, it's not going to kill us. And we got paid back on everything, or she did, except for one mobile home we financed in South Florida. We didn't lose all of our money, but we lost some. And that taught me a lot of valuable lessons about investing close by. If you can't drive there in a reasonable amount of time and verify what you have and manage it, my advice is don't buy it. If you're going to keep it. If you're going to flip it, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to keep it as a rental and a long-term investment, I think you should have access to it. If you have a private plane and want to fly across country and do it tax deductibly, that may be an opportunity. But we learned a lot from that, of investing close, keeping your money close, where you can monitor what's going on, and if it needs to sell it, you can sell it yourself and save a lot of commissions.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you lost money on a deal. So you have had some bad deals before. What is the worst deal that you've ever done, and why was it the worst one?
Oh, that is so easy to answer, because nobody wants to talk about the stuff that went well. They want to talk about the things that killed them. If you're in this business long enough, the price of being in business is an occasional loss. There's just no way around it. The worst deal we ever did was I bought a house, took over the payments, and it was trashed. I mean trashed. It was 80 sheets of sheetrock, total paint, new kitchen, new bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. Me and a buddy of mine worked on that house for 2.5 months, 6 days a week, did all that work, and then the market turned down. We couldn't get people financed. We couldn't sell it at the price we thought it should bring, and we ended up, after all expenses, et cetera, I think we made enough money to have a nice dinner. And we worked like dogs in that house for a long time, and it just didn't pay off. That's probably the worst one we ever did. We didn't lose anything other than our time. By the way, now that I'm older, that's probably my most valuable resource. Time is valuable the older you get, and I'm never going to get that 2 months back. But again, that's the price for being in business. So that was probably the worst deal we ever did.
All right. So on the flip side of that, and I always like to ask both of these questions and not just the bad ones, what was the best deal that you've ever done?
Well, there's been a lot of best deals by any measure, but one that sticks in my mind was in the 90s. I bought a house in Pasadena. I think it was a FHA foreclosure. Probably paid $38,000 for. I'm doing this from memory, and that's a long time ago, so I'm not going to swear on these numbers, but I want you to get the concept regardless. I might have paid 38 to 40 for it, put another 10% on the fix-up, so $45,000 into it. I think I marketed it at that time, owner finance, for $59,000. So I had a little bit of equity in there, $10,000, $15,000, and back then that was a good portion. Sold the house for $5,000 down, $400 a month payments. And the buyer, wanted to pay it off very fast. So in addition to monthly payments, he was making, every 6 months, he would make me a $5,000 additional principal payment. And he did that for 3 years. Monthly payments and then $5,000. And I got most of my money back. And then all of a sudden, nothing. No payments, no phone calls. Went to the house to find out what was going on, because this guy was a gem, and he didn't make a payment. I got to the house, and the front door was swinging on the hinges, busted wide open. And I thought, what happened here? And the neighbor came over and said, oh, yeah, DEA came in. They found a bunch of weed in the house, and he's in prison, and they're gone. So as a lender, I foreclosed the house, got title back, fixed it up again, probably spent another $5,000 fixing it up, and sold it for $75,000. I basically got a house for free.
Mm-hmm.
And started
No
all
wonder he
over.
was making those $5,000 payments every month.
Yeah, he could, well, not every 6 months. He could
Every 6
afford
months,
to until his train went off the tracks. So he almost paid off the house, got caught with his pants down, And we started over and did it again at a higher value because it had appreciated by then, because this took 3 or 4 years. Sold it for more money, got more down payment to pay for the repairs, and started over, and that house paid off. That was a pretty good deal.
And that was another owner finance situation, wasn't it?
I've made my best rates of return owner financing. Yes.
So can you explain a little bit about what owner financing is so that people that never heard that term before can
Sure.
understand it?
Yeah, that's part of our secret vernacular. Owner financing is just a complicated way of saying that instead of a home buyer going to a bank, borrowing the money, and then the bank pays the seller of the property in full, that the seller of the property loans his equity directly to the person buying the home. They make a small down payment, usually 10% or less of the value, sometimes more. And then he carries what we call the paper. He carries the financing. He just takes payments. You've heard of these used car places, buy here, pay here. That's what we do. Buy the house here, you pay here, and we actually transfer title of the property to the buyer, subject to a note and a deed of trust, which are security documents that say we are transferring title to you and you promise to pay us back with this document. And if you don't, what can I do about it? And the answer is foreclosure and get the property back, which we've had to do in rare instances. It does happen, and we usually make money when that happens. But it's a fancy way of saying make your payments to me instead of making them to a bank.
Okay. And how does that differ from your private lending?
Private lending also, you hear the term hard money loans, hard money lending, bridge loans. All that is under the rubric of if an investor wants to buy an investment piece of property, he's not going to live in it. He wants to borrow money short term, not for 20 years or 30 years. He needs to borrow it for 6 months or a year. Private money loan would be a bridge loan or a temporary loan to get that deal funded, to get the house purchased, to get it fixed up and marketed for sale. In this economy, you're not going to have near as much trouble selling stuff on new loans, and because we have a housing shortage, at least here in Houston, and I believe in a lot of the state. So if you want to sell your house and they get their own, well, if you're this is the investor scenario. They need to borrow the resources. They found a good deal, borrow the resources to get it fixed up, purchased, and long enough to get it marketed. When they sell the house on new financing from a bank, then everybody gets paid back, including the lender. And the profit that's left over, that goes to the investor. And sometimes that can be very profitable.
That's super interesting. So basically, if I understood you correctly, with the private lending, it's a short-term loan, and with like the owner financing, you're selling a property to somebody for, let's say, 30 years, and they're paying you back over that 30-year period with interest and whatever the terms are.
That's common. That's common. We typically do our financing for 20 years. It's easy to calculate. And remember, as a lender, one of the things I learned is if you're going to be a lender, you want to get paid back as quickly as possible. If you're a borrower, you want to borrow for as long as possible. So as a lender, I'm doing 20-year loans, not 30, because who'll know if I'll be around in 30 years? I want to see those payments. So I'm going to try to hurry up and get those payments in. If I were on the borrower side, I want to delay them as long as possible. If I get 40-year financing, great, particularly at today's rates.
Okay, so knowing what you know now, all right, if you could go back and give yourself advice back when you were, 19, 20, something like that, what would the advice that you would give yourself, what would that be?
Don't delay. If you're going to be an investor, be an investor. Don't get caught up, as I did, with the paralysis of analysis. I became a librarian. I was gathering all this information, listening to tapes, getting documents, getting prepared for the deal that didn't come for over 2 years because I was scared. You can't progress being scared. COVID's got everybody locked down because they're scared. Well, how's that worked out for the economy? Now, on a national basis, don't be scared. If you don't know what you're doing, and if you're getting started, who could expect you to know everything by definition? Find somebody who does, and if you have to give them a part of your deal, which I did on my first one, let them have a piece of it and let them teach you, and then that fear just washes away. That was easy. All these concerns I had, now that I've seen it done, it's so, all the veil of mystery and angst that people get over doing their first deal just washes away. Do a deal. Make offers.
So,
Don't delay.
so then where would you find somebody? I mean, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Where would you find somebody that you could partner with, like you did, to give them a piece of the deal, to help hold your hand and to walk you through the process?
Well, in the next room where we're speaking today is a room full of people where you would find those people.
That's where you are, which would, you would also be a great option for somebody to find and talk
Sure.
to and
Absolutely.
do deals with, because you also do deals still.
We're buying a house about every 2 months. I've got 2 in the mill right now, and we're every day looking for more opportunity in the marketplace. Even though we have adequate resources to retire maybe 10 years ago, we're not going to retire because I'm not that personality. It's not that I need more. I just don't want to leave it at the bank at 0.002% rate of return when we can make 12% in the marketplace or 15%. The yields are so much better that we're just not going to sit idly by and let what's that term?
Let the money just rot away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
languish away with inflation. We have to put it out there and get it working at a rate higher than inflation. Otherwise, you lose money.
Yeah, if you leave it in the bank, you're making that fraction of a percent while the bank's making 5 or 6% off that money you gave them.
Right.
Or more. Yeah. And the fact that if you leave the money in the bank with that interest rate that they give you, that does not catch up to inflation.
Particularly after taxes. Remember,
Right.
IRS is a partner in everything that you do. You have to make those calculations on after-tax dollars. That's part of the calculations on what are actual rates of return. What am I really making? If you're in a very high tax bracket, over 30%, you make $100,000 a year, but you don't get to buy $100,000 worth of groceries. You're at $70,000 worth of groceries minus whatever sales tax on that. So you might be at 65% on the dollar. So you have to be careful in calculating these things to make sure you're getting true numbers and not living in a fantasy. Well, I made $100,000 pre-tax. Well, what are you making at the end of the day on your tax return?
Right. What are you actually bringing home?
Right.
Because Uncle Sam has definitely got a finger in that pie, and sales tax is definitely a thing that happens here in Texas for sure.
Absolutely.
Thankfully, no state taxes, which is amazing.
Well, not yet.
Oh, no. Let's not even go there.
Exactly.
No state taxes. That's why I moved here. I don't want to have to move again. What is your favorite aspect of real estate investing?
My favorite aspect is revolves around what I'm going to be doing at the end of next month. We are going out of state to taking the RV, going skiing for a week, and after that we're going jeeping in Utah for 2 weeks. And if I've got my phone with me, I can do business. I'm not tied to an office. I can still make money as long as I have cellular service and my computer works. I can transfer funds to whoever needs them to get deals done. I guess I could shape it up with one word, and that would be freedom. We have freedom to go and do what we want to do, when we want to do it, and I don't have to worry about the bill coming in and not being able to pay it.
Awesome. So do you have anybody that works for you currently, or is it just you and your wife?
Well, my grandson has come on board in the past couple of years, and he's done 6 deals already in the past 13 months. So.
And how old is he?
He just turned 21.
Wow. So this is really turning out to be more like a family business where you're actually changing the destiny of your whole family.
Well, and that's the idea. We we're trying to accumulate generational wealth, not just enough money to buy groceries at the end of the month. I want to have generational wealth that's going to support multiple people for many, many years. And that's what real estate has done for me.
So I know that you've mentioned this several times, self-education, getting into the room with other people that do things like the RIA meeting that there's going on next door right now, and being around people that are doing what you want to do and never being the smartest person in the room, basically. Um, how are you teaching your grandson, and how did you teach your kids? Because this is important to me. I have a 1-year-old right now, and I also have a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old. Um, and I'm really trying to figure out ways to teach them about money and about how to think about investing, and not just to be a cog in the wheel of a machine for somebody else's business.
Well, we started with him teaching one of the most important aspects of what we have learned, and that's negotiating. On one of our RV trips to the West Coast, we went to a restaurant and ordered our food, and it didn't come out in a timely manner. And I said to the grandson, find out what's going on and see what you can get for the delay. Don't ask for anything immoral or illegal or anything like that. We've experienced an inconvenience as a consumer. See what you can get for that inconvenience. And 5 minutes later, he walks back with a huge plate of guacamole on the house, and then our food came. You have to teach the next generation about the real world. You have to teach them how to balance a checkbook. You have to teach them all the stuff the public government schools are not going to teach them. And that is the real world, the street smarts that we all are learning. When we would go to dinner, I would hand the bill to my grandson and say, make sure that they're only charging us for what we ordered. Nothing more, nothing less. And how much is it going to cost? And here's $100. What should the change be? I wanted him to do those calculations, because at some point I'll be gone and he'll have to do that. And I think parents really do a disservice by not preparing the next generation for the real world.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left. So, Brandon, what's that last big golden nugget you want to try and pull out of this interview?
Ooh, man, there was so much in that I'm still unpacking it a little bit. Man, because that's really important to me, right? I'm a little bit selfish as an interviewer, because I want to answer questions that I have about things. I want to be in the same room with people that are smarter than me to get that knowledge.
If I could just interrupt for a second,
Mhm.
Brandon, I'm not smarter than you. I'm not smarter than
Oh.
Al. I'm not smarter than anybody here. I may have more knowledge, but I'm not
Right.
any sharper at processing the knowledge. I've been exposed to it longer and been willing to gather it in. That's the difference between all of us.
Maybe I should clarify that and say more experience than me.
I've
How about
got a
that?
lot of experience. That's correct.
There we go.
But I
I mean,
don't
you're-
want people to fall into the trap that I can't do that. I don't have the intellect. That's BS. Everybody can do
I agree.
this.
I absolutely agree. Because I mean, I've seen some of the investors that are very successful here in San Antonio, and they're definitely not smarter than me. But they definitely have a lot more experience and a lot more money than I do, because of their willingness to go out and learn, to be part of a group and things like that. Tom, what is the one big takeaway from your previous careers to your investing career to now being a grandfather and a private lender? What is the biggest thing that you've taken away from this whole experience through your life? If you could condense it down into just a small little bit of information, what would that be to the other people that are out there that are thinking about investing, that are starting, that want to scale? Are any of those people that just don't even know what they don't know?
Well, a lot of this will be redundant. Get around people that you want to emulate. If you see a guy that's super successful running apartments and that's what you want to do as much as you can to spend as much time as you can with him. Buy him lunch, buy him dinner, whatever you got to do to bend his ear, to listen and take his advice. If you want to do single family homes, get with single family home buyers that are doing what you want to do. If you want to be in the rental business, get with a landlord that's got multiple units, that's been doing it a long time. That will fast track your career better than anything. You have to get in with people that are already doing what you want to do. If you wait on your own skills, knowledge, and what you can pick up out of the occasional book, it's going to take forever. To fast track your career, you have to get with people that are already doing it.
Ray has mentioned that more than once. Like, if whatever you want to do, surround yourself with the people that are doing it, and you'll get there.
Well, we live in the medical center area here in Houston, and we have medical colleges all around. And every time I've been seen by a doctor in the past 5 years, he's got 3 or 4 college students right there with him, explaining every aspect, this doctor that's been doing it 32 years, to the next generation. And the doctor will ask the intern guy, why am I poking here? Why am I asking this question? When I manipulate the joint this way, what are you feeling for? You need that kind of in-depth knowledge in our field of study. And if you're not getting that, you need to go where it is. These young doctors are going around the old guys and following them room to room, patients to patients, analyzing their quote-unquote deal. What's wrong with you? And that's all we are in the real estate business. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with your situation that we can help you with? And if you don't have that seasoned professional leading you, it's going to really exacerbate and lengthen your training period.
One of the things that I thought was super interesting, because that was basically what you've said a lot of the time that we've been on this interview, is that, you need to be around these people that are doing what you want to do. And you were willing to pay to get into the room with people that were doing what you wanted to do.
You have
And
to.
I think that a lot of people don't understand that sometimes you want to buy somebody lunch, but they're super busy or they're very successful, and they've had that offer 10, 20, 100, 500 times. And they might not be interested in that because that doesn't help them in any way. So you either need to find something that helps them, and you need to come from a place of giving, or you need to be willing to pay for the education.
Well, what does a college education cost these days?
Right.
Well, we're getting close to the end here. We're going to be here at least until noon at 1001 West Loop South. Come and join us. That's it for the Massive Passive Show today.
Thanks, fellas.
Guys, thank you so much. I'm very grateful that I was able to interview you guys and spend some time with you guys. I hope you guys have a very blessed day, and go enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
All right, and we're out.
Oh man, that was really good. Tom, you did great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the insights. Very deep. And like I said, I am a selfish interviewer. That question about the kids was totally for me.
Well,
I am totally going to.
I'm still here. We can talk some more off air. I'm happy to help.
So is it just your grandson, or your kids interested at all?
Well, all I have now is my grandson. I offered this opportunity to a stepson, and he was not ready. And he just didn't take the advice and went a different direction. And he will tell you to this day that was a huge mistake. He should have listened. So, yeah, right now it's just my grandson. I've got grandson twins that are 3. I don't know if I'll live long enough to help them come through the ranks, but if I'm around, I'm sure